Guest has just described what's happened to him and to his son and to his family as unthinkable, but sometimes unthinkable things do happen. His name is Ben Brooks-Dutton. If life had gone according to plan, he certainly wouldn't be here in the studio with me right now. He'd be heading up his PR company, leading a normal life, having a normal day. Instead, something so awful happened it's almost impossible to talk about it, and that is that on November the 10th in West Hampstead, North London, a car mounted a pavement, killing his wife Desreen. He and his wife were out with their 2-year-old son Jackson at the time, since which point Ben found himself, I think almost found himself, he'll tell us how he came about doing it, but he found himself blogging. And his blog is called lifeasawidower.com, and he's here to talk about it now. And I asked him to come in because various of my colleagues here have been reading what you've written, Ben, and have found it helpful and extraordinary and, you know, fascinating and hellish in equal measure, really. And so you're being very much talked about. And so I was hoping you would come in, and here you are.
Thanks for having me.
It's all so recent, though.
Yeah, it is. I mean, the blog's had a phenomenal response, and I really set it up because when the incident happened, I was searching for men just like me online to try and find some empathy, to try and find people that had gone through this. But it's had about 250,000 hits now in just 3.5 weeks, which suggests to me that it's not just widowers going through a similar thing. It's actually being read by all sorts of different people, really to get an appreciation of what they've got in life. That's what I'm getting the most feedback about, really. People just saying that they really have started to appreciate everything that they've got. And also, I mean, the other main thing that people are using it for, they're passing it on to people that are grieving, to show that these feelings that I'm feeling are completely normal, because actually a lot of people that are grieving, whether they be widows or widowers or otherwise, they feel ostracised, they feel pushed out. People that were once their friends cross the road to avoid them because they just don't know what to say. So partly, I think what I'm aiming to do with the blog is to educate people in how to deal with widows and widowers and how to deal with people that are grieving, and that's something that's really playing out now.
Well, maybe we'll talk about that first then, because obviously I had to go, and I was pleased to go to greet you at the door to say welcome and thank you for coming and bringing you into the studio, and it was pretty much beyond me to think of what to say. You've just lost your wife at 33. It was only a few weeks ago. You left with a little boy. You know, it's all terribly new. You look grief-stricken. I mean, I don't know what you looked like before. There's a picture of you in the paper here, you know, with your wife, I think, on holiday. Looking happier and looking like an altogether, quite honestly, different person with a much fuller face and, you know, colour in your cheeks. And now you look absolutely devastated. You really do. And I don't know you, and I wanted to say something comforting and supportive, and to show that I obviously my heart goes out to you, as everybody's will listening. And even though I speak for a living and I'm a mum and I'm everything else, it's hard to know what to say. And I said to you something like, oh my God, I know words won't come anywhere near it, but I'm so terribly sorry for your loss. And then you said to me, gosh, I've just about had it with people apologising. And I'm sort of imagining that everybody who speaks to you says sorry before they say anything, do they?
Well, I think the important thing to do is just to do something or to say something. There are no words that can change what's happened. There's few words that can make you feel any better about anything, but something I found early on through a charity called Care for the Family was some guidelines that you can pass on to friends and family just via email. It's just a PDF of do's and don'ts, things to do to help support people, especially widows and widowers. And one of the things that really struck a chord with me was to actually just do something and stop asking what it is that you can do to help, because asking the griever what to do is giving them another job to think about. Everything is pressure when you're going through something like this. Your to-do list is longer than it's ever felt, and then all of a sudden someone says, let me know if there's anything I can do for you, and you think, well, there's another job for me, and you've got away with it. So these guidelines really say to people, try to do these things, just do something. So it might actually be, since I've sent those out, I can't tell you the number of friends and family that have come round with the shopping. They've unpacked it, they've made dinner, they've put it on the table, and then they've cleared the dishes up afterwards. I didn't ask them to do anything, and they didn't put the pressure on me. They just came and helped. But equally, people do cross the road to avoid you because they don't know what to say. And I think that's a sign of our society, really. We're not taught about grief or loss. We're taught all about childbirth. We go to NCT classes. Somebody comes round and tells you how to look after the baby for weeks after. No one checks in on you when you've lost someone important to you. They don't check to see if you're okay. They don't check what your mental state is. And so this part of the blog is really helping people to appreciate and understand what they can do to help people who have lost.
Well, one of the blogs that I read of yours is really a kind of like a lesson to yourself because you say in it that you know, you came back from the funeral and you've got this little boy who never got a chance to say goodbye to his mum, and you went out together, and then you come back and it's just the two of you. It's just utterly heartbreaking in every possible way. And you said that you saw it as your duty as a man and as a father to put up a really terrific show of everything being just fine, and absolutely smiling and absolutely going out to the park and pushing him on the swings and laughing and all this kind of thing, when inside obviously you're crumbling and crumpling in the most terribly bad way. And it was kind of almost like a point of honour for you not to cry in front of your son. And then you had some kind of revelation where you realise that's not right at all.
Well, it's what we're told to do. Everybody comes round and says, be strong, be a man, you know, have the stiff upper lip, you need to be stoic. And it's because they don't know what to say. They don't care if you're strong or not, really. It's just another, you know, it's a platitude, it's something to say to people. And so you start to think that that's the only way to be. And I have to say, I'm a very different person. I'm a very different person now than I was 3 weeks after my wife died and when we had the funeral. It was the utmost importance to me that I got up in front of everyone and didn't cry and did a great eulogy and all of these things. But looking back at it now, it wouldn't have mattered to me if I did cry. It would have been about how other people felt. And what I learned over time was that I started doing lots of research and reading about what to do and how to treat a grieving toddler, and nobody really tells you what to do. You have to make up your own mind, and then there's experts that you can talk to, charities like Winston's Wish, and they tell you if they think you're doing the right thing or not. So it felt to me that if I was hiding my emotions from him, he wasn't going to become the man I want him to be. I don't want him to hide from me. I don't want him to hide his feelings from me. And also, how could I justify showing myself to be happy to my son when his mum's just died? How confusing would that be? So I thought it's really important that I start to show him the emotions that I actually feel so that he can show them back. And I really do believe that while I was hiding my feelings from him and my emotions from him, he was doing the same to me, because people that looked after him in the hours that I went out for a run or nipped to the gym or something like that were telling me things that he was doing and saying that he wasn't happy saying in front of me.
That's fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah.
So let's just establish he's only 2.
He's only 2, yeah.
So people listening might think at 2 years old, A, he wouldn't really grasp what was happening anyway, and B, he'd be much too little to be sophisticated enough to work out how to shield you from his emotions. But you're telling us that's not the case at all. A, he really knows what's going on, and B, he's careful to protect his daddy. He doesn't want to cry in front of you, just as you didn't want to cry in front of him, which is really quite remarkable. And I don't think we necessarily would have known that if you hadn't told us that.
No, there's a post on my blog called Little Lessons, and it's all about the lessons that he's taught me about grief, because children that age don't have any barriers, really. They don't hold back, and so if he gets angry, he just shows that anger, where I might hold it inside, and it'll turn into frustration and even anxiety later on down the line. But he's really revealing himself to have the same emotions as me, and to not hold back from them in any way whatsoever, so that, you know, they're much more emotionally intelligent than you probably give them credit for, which is why I think hiding grief from them, it just isn't a choice that I'll take. It's not the route I want to take at all.
Have you tried to explain it to him and come up with? I mean, people...
Yeah, I've told him the truth. I've told him the truth that I thought about it for a long time. Lots of people sent me books and poems and stories about kangaroos that had lost their friendly badger friend and they'd gone to a better place and things like this. And I heard the word better place and I just thought, come on, she's not gone to a better place. If she could choose, she wouldn't be there, because she'd be next to her son who she adored. And how confusing it is for a child to tell him that his mum's gone to a better place, because he's going to think, well, is it better than me, or can I go there? So I thought the only way to really handle it was to tell him the truth. And you're told that they don't understand certain words yet, like death or ever or never, these different things. But I kind of thought, well, he needs to learn them at some point, and I can't tell him one story now and then change it when he's 5, like we might tell a story about Father Christmas. It just didn't make sense to me to compare the two. So when the time was right, and when he wasn't crying or emotional in any way, and when he was actually quite happy, we sat down and we talked about his mum, and I told him what had happened, and I continued to tell him. And now when I pick him up from nursery, on the couple of days he goes a week, the carers there tell me that he's repeating the words back that I've said to him, which are that she's gone away and she can't come back, and she'd never have left him because she didn't want to go. But I know that it's sinking in now, because he says it on a daily basis to the other people that take care of him.
Does that mean he doesn't ask for her anymore? anymore?
It's very interesting. He doesn't ask where she is. He says he wants her, which is exactly the same as I feel. I know I can't have her. I want her, but she can't come back.
Do you say the same? Do you say, and I want her too?
I do, yeah. Every time he says, I want mummy, I say, I want mummy too.
Oh, gosh. Does it feel to you as if you're almost kind of carving out the rules from scratch? Because it sounds as if, you've sought advice from various organisations and charities and people who should know what to do, and they've all got some kind of format, but you're pioneering in a way. You're carving your own route, aren't you?
Well, I think it's a big part of it is about understanding your child in the first place and what's right for them and their needs. It's difficult because there's a lot of advice out there if you go and look for it, and there's a lot of people that are willing and able to help. But the impossible part about it all is that when a child that's lost as a toddler is old enough to talk about how it felt, they can't remember. Yeah. is the challenge. So with the best will in the world, all of these experts that I can talk to can give advice, but they can't necessarily say what the result of that advice was further down the line. And I know that there'll be challenges again. It'd be naive of me to think that when he's 4 or 5 he isn't going to start school and people aren't going to bully him for only having one parent, because that's what kids are like. And people say, oh, that won't happen, it's too cruel, but kids are cruel. Kids can be cruel. So these charities are there further down the line as well to help you with those kind of things, and to help give advice about how to keep the memory of the lost parent alive.
Gosh, it's an incredibly difficult and delicate path to tread, isn't it, when obviously you're in a pretty precarious state yourself, because as you say yourself just a few weeks ago is almost like a stranger to you now, because I imagine you have been in the deepest kind of shock, the sort of shock that means that every pore of your body doesn't feel really like you, and even if you clean your teeth, it doesn't feel like you cleaning your own teeth. You feel so out of yourself because of the terrible, unbelievable trauma of the shock that you've been through. So what about people looking after you and that kind of thing, just to get you through it all?
Well, I think everyone's been incredible. I think I've kind of allowed people to help. That's the big thing. I think in the first few weeks it was very difficult because both myself and my wife were very independent. We were independent parents. We didn't want a lot of help. We got it, we got it from grandparents and friends and stuff, but we wanted to really be there and be our own little family. So it's difficult in a very short number of weeks and days to break that cycle really, and to try not to be independent, to try and accept help. But I have done gradually. I think helping people understand how to help has been the best help to me through those guidelines that I talked about that are on my blog as well. And so, yeah, I allow people. I mean, I still want to be there and be, the person, the primary carer for my child. I want to be both mum and dad to him, really. But I think that for him to be happy, he needs to see me happier as well. And sometimes that means taking a break and accepting help from people.
And grief is something that we're terrified of. I mean, we're terrified of death, and quite rightly so, obviously. The idea of mortality is terrifying to us. But grief is something that we're absolutely scared witless of, isn't it?
And so we don't talk about it.
Well, we don't talk about it, but also we do absolutely anything we can to try and ameliorate it, whether it means going to get tranquilizers or whether it's sleeping pills or whether we drink our way through it, or we eat our way through it, or we do something or other, anything really, or some kind of displacement activity, so we don't really have to feel the full onslaught of grief, which is absolutely devastating, obviously. And you still are right in the grips of that emotion. How do you describe and kind of quantify that emotion when you write about it on your blog, or when you think about it yourself? Just the absolute full force of this absolute unmitigated grief that you're going through.
I think it's about trying to understand it and interpret it and then document it. I think the books that I was reading in the early days, what they tended to do was talk about grief with hindsight, and it's almost like it had slightly softened and they could talk with the experience that they then had. And actually, I think what I was looking for was a documentation of really raw grief, which is what I'm now giving, because I've kind of compared it to labour, if you'll allow me to. I do
allow it.
Because I think that if women remembered every single twitch and pain of labour, they probably wouldn't have a second child. And so I think that if I don't document this now, I won't be able to come back later and describe what it felt like. I started keeping a paper diary of how I felt, and because there were no eyeballs on it other than mine, it just ended up being lots of woeful adjectives. And I thought, when I try to describe this to my son in years to come, I won't be able to give him the full picture. And what I really want him to understand is how he grieved and how he behaved. And, on the god-awful day that he might say, I don't remember mummy, at least he'll know exactly how much he loved her and how much he missed her and how his behaviour actually helped helped and informed mine further down the line. I want him to see what an influence he had on me, and not just me on him. And so I think the only way to capture that is as it happens. And it's not easy, but at the same time, it is cathartic to get it out. I hadn't written a post since Friday or Saturday, and I wrote one this morning. And I just texted my wife's auntie this morning and just said that actually felt quite good, because it was something I needed to get off my chest. And it's hard to always call somebody up and just talk about how you're feeling on any given day, because you know it's going to be a miserable call. So actually, writing it where it's just one-way dialogue, it's quite cathartic.
I mean, the latest blog, the brand new one posted today, that the heading is, and people will be surprised by this heading, but not when you explain why. The heading is woman trouble, but it's not really your woman trouble, is it?
No, I like the little headings because they suck people in, I think, and then and they're always about something slightly different to what they'd imagine. It's about the trouble that my little boy is having with women at the moment. It's about the fact that he's taken a slight dislike to anyone that's about Desrene's age, my wife's age. I don't know if he feels threatened by them, or whether it's because he doesn't quite trust them because his mummy's gone away and she can't come back. And I pose a number of questions for what it might be there. But one thing that I have really noticed is that the affection that he had for his mum, and that he always, poured upon her, I've now got that affection, and other people around are treated more like I was before she died, which was, I just took his frustrations. He would shout my name when something had broken, or he was upset with something because it was always my fault. If he was frustrated, he'd walk across the room and give me a slap, those kind of things. But that doesn't happen to me anymore. It actually happens to his grandma.
Does it? Yeah. Gosh, isn't that interesting? And probably unexpected, because people might think he would sort of cleave unto any woman because he was missing his mummy so much, but actually he's not. That's I mean, it's quite revelatory, all these things that you're finding out actually, and observing so minutely all the time. What about just the day-to-day minutiae? I mean, once the funeral's over and you've given the oration and you haven't cried, and you the final vol-au-vent's been cleared away, and you know what I mean, and you're back to what's supposed to be normal life, whatever that is. And then for you, it just could not be less normal, because your wife, your lover, your partner isn't there, and there's this gaping sort of chasm in just your daily, minute by minute, second by second life. There's the bit where all the people who are meant to be shoring you up go home to their real lives, and yours is just you and your son, and this kind of, this abyss, really. And I'm imagining that the first few days and weeks, which you're still in, really, it must be incredibly difficult just to think in terms of hour to hour, let alone day to day.
The time after the funeral is very hard, because people travel across the country, they come and see you, and then, as you say, they go back to their lives. It's a difficult time of year as well, because the funeral was at the end of November, and then all of a sudden it's party season and it's Christmas, and it's something that I just didn't want to be a part of. And then all of a sudden, when you're slightly ready to, come back out of your shell, and you're glad it's not Christmas anymore, it's January and everyone wants to stay indoors, they've got no money and they're not drinking anymore. And so it's a difficult time. I mean, I'm fortunate in that I've got lots of great friends and close family, but even still, there was a time where I was pushing against all of those people. I wanted to prove that I could be a great dad, and I could do it all on my own, and I could be strong and be a man. I suppose I'd yo-yoed back to that. But I think the most difficult thing for me was actually going over the same grief time and time again with people, and you feel like you've got to fill people in. So you've not seen them for a week, and you talk about how you felt a week ago, and you don't feel like that anymore. You've moved on. It's something different, for better or worse, really. And so the idea of the blog really started then, because I thought everyone can understand what we're going through and potentially how to help us, people that actually know us. And I don't keep having to have those conversations, and it's actually been quite useful. I had a friend over from New York on Sunday, and he'd be one of those people that I would have had to start at the beginning, and go back through it all, and it would have been very painful. Similarly, I had a friend over from Norway, and he said to me straight away, I really appreciate what you do, and I know you're not doing this for me specifically, but I know how you feel now, and I don't have to keep asking you how you feel, and we can have something like a normal conversation. I can take you for dinner and we can just talk like old mates that we are from university. And that's really important to me now. I think what's actually quite funny is people will phone me up and say, are you okay? and I'll say, I'm fine. Because they're talking about something that they've just read, which actually, because it's not a chronological blog, it might be how I was feeling 7 days ago, and I've, again, moved on, but they're stuck on the words that are on the page that have just been posted.
Do people post their own comments on your blog?
Yeah.
And do they tell you how they're doing? I mean, are there people in a similar situation who are kind of pretty much in sync with you, who are experiencing similar things at a similar time?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's lots of different sorts of people commenting on the blog. Some people are actually saying that it's 8 years down the line now since they lost their partner, and they've never grieved properly, and they've just broken down when they've read a passage from the blog.
I'll just stop you there and I'll ask you a question, because I don't know the answer, and I'd like to know it if you have any insight into it. People often talk about not grieving properly, and they often say, I just didn't grieve at the time, and then like 16 years later, just all came spewing out, I just couldn't get out of bed, and I couldn't stop crying, and I realised I hadn't grieved properly. How do you know how to grieve properly? Is there any kind of rubric for how to do this?
No, I don't.
How do you do it?
What I'm learning is everyone's experience of grief is different, but I think what is important is that you actually face grief. You allow it to take you, if you will, because it's going to get you at some point. And I think what I'm learning is that people that bottle it up and run away from it, it will come back and bite them further down the line. It happens a lot to men because we're told to be strong. They store it inside, and it can turn into repressed grief, which can turn into anxiety, and anxiety causes stress, and stress is a killer. And so that's why I'm banging this drum, really, especially for men. I'm doing it for anyone to encourage them to grieve, but the important thing is, for me, is to get the message out that it's best not repressed, because it will have its way with you at some point.
I just wonder, you say, I encourage you to grieve, and then people thinking, well, okay, but what do I do? Especially if tears don't come naturally, especially if you've been trained not to cry very much.
And it's not necessarily about crying. No. It's just allowing yourself to be taken by it, to feel, and not to just bottle it up and run away from it. It might not be tears. Some people don't cry. I have days where I get frustrated that my eyes are like cacti, and just there's no water there. But those are days where the tears actually don't help. Sometimes it helps to get angry. Sometimes it helps to get mad and be frustrated. It's best in a controlled environment, I'd say, and not to take it out on any passerby that doesn't know what you're going through. But there are techniques. There's techniques for children as well to bring out anger before it even happens that I'm learning on behalf of my son.
And you're not at work at the moment, although you will be going back fairly soon. I don't know how you make the decision, like when is a good time to go back, when it feels right to go back, when you've got to go back, that kind of thing.
I'm just going to give it a go. I'm just going to give it a go and see how I feel. I've got a great employer, you just have to try. I think you just have to do it when it feels right. Some people want to get straight back to work straight away to get some routine and something like normality back in their lives. But I've taken some time off to prioritise my son.
I would be extremely grateful if you might come back and talk to us, let's say maybe, I don't know, say another 3 months down the line, just because it seems to me that you're learning fresh things. Your insights are extraordinary, and every week that goes by you're learning more and more, and these are things I think that are enormously helpful, because obviously the thing that you can never legislate for in something like what you're going through is the unexpected nature of it. And we had talked to the philosopher Alain de Botton the other day after the helicopter crash in Vauxhall. We talked about the fact that one fellow going to work that day never made it to work because bits of fuselage fell on his head and killed him. Well, you don't need me to tell you that story. That's pretty much what happened to your family just in West Hampstead on a normal day. And Alain de Botton, the philosopher, was saying how difficult it is for human beings to kind of compute that sort of random happening. If you hadn't been there at that point, it wouldn't, and you were, and it did. It's unbelievably difficult for us to get our heads around that, and I imagine that's one of your key struggles on an hourly basis, pretty much. I think what I found is, we were together for 8 years, and it's very difficult to slip out of the habits of 8 years in just a few weeks. So although one day I could say that I've accepted that she's gone, that I understand that she's gone, your mind will play little tricks on you, and sometimes it happens every Saturday to me. I stand at the window in the kitchen and I'm getting my son's breakfast ready, and I look out to see if she's back from our run, because that was just a habit. It's a habit we've been in for years. And then even though I know that she's dead, I can't help but look out for her to come back. And you have to kind of I have to tell myself every day, I have to say the words never again to myself every day, just to try and train my brain that it isn't going to see her again. Listen, thank you very much indeed for coming in. So my guest has been Ben Brooks-Dutton. The blog is called lifeasawidower.com, and you may well want to read it and find out more, and also keep abreast with Ben and his son and see how they're doing, and obviously keep up to date with everything else. Now Ben's going to go because he doesn't want to take calls, which I completely understand. He doesn't feel he's qualified to give advice, although actually I think he'd be terrific at it. He doesn't feel ready to do it. But if you want to call on this subject afterwards, I'll be here and I'll take your calls, and we'll have somebody else who'll give a bit more sort of professional type information and that sort of stuff. Listen, I can't thank you enough for coming in. I think it must have been pretty ghastly talking about it on the radio. Thank you very much indeed. And now it's time for the news headlines.